Before we get the session started, I wanted to briefly acknowledge Episcopal Communities and Services, known as ECS, our host for this morning's session. Serving seniors since 1923, ECS owns and manages retirement communities ranging from affordable housing to high-end life plan communities, all of which are located in the Los Angeles and Orange County areas. The 3 retirement communities hosting this morning's session are as follows. The first is the Canterbury, located in Rancho Palos Verdes. The second community host this morning is the Covington, located in Aliso Viejo. And our third community host is Montecedro, nestled in the foothills of Altadena. The past several months, all 3 of our communities have successfully been moving people in and are now conducting both virtual and live tours. So if you are interested, please reach out to our team and make an appointment to learn how we are managing community living today. Hear about all the events our residents are enjoying via Zoom and in person while adhering to our COVID-19 safety protocols. If interested, our contact information will be available at the end of the session. For those of you just joining, welcome to today's webinar titled Eat Smart, The Benefits of Superfoods, with Emilie Matthaei of Morrison Living and video presentation by celebrity chef Bal Arneson. We are excited for today's presentation, and to teach us how to eat smart, I present you Emilie Matthaei, who will introduce herself and share with you her presentation. Emilie?
Thank you, Krista. Hi, everyone. My name is Emilie Matthaei, and I'm really excited to be joining you all in your homes this Wednesday. So we woke up to about 3 inches of snow here in Denver, Colorado. That's where I'm based. But just looking at those pictures and hearing about that you all are in Los Angeles area, really making me miss the sunshine. So anyway, that's why I keep my ice scraper in my car year round. You never know. All right. So I am a registered dietitian at Claremont Park. We're located in Denver, Colorado, and I work for Morrison Living. And I first became interested in nutrition when I was about 14 years old. I got a pamphlet in the mail from PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And so I promptly decided to become vegetarian. And because I was still growing, I was a young girl, my parents really stressed that I would need to look into nutrition and make sure that I was getting everything I needed without eating, a major food group, without eating meat. And so that just started me on my journey to becoming a dietitian. Even though I'm no longer a vegetarian, I do still really focus on, and I'm really interested in plant-forward or plant-focused eating. So this is one of my favorite topics, and it's why I'm really excited to talk about today's topic with you. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, so I grew up in the Chicago area. And then I did my internship to become a dietitian at Montana State University in Bozeman. So that's where I first discovered the mountains and decided to move to Colorado after that. I love doing any sort of outdoor activity. I love hiking, skiing, running in the mountains. Of course, like it a lot better when there's not snow and ice on the ground, but all this snow should be melting in a couple days and we'll be back to 90-degree weather later this week. All right, so let's get started a little bit into today's topic. The reason why I picked this topic and why I'm excited to talk to you about it today is because, of course, not only exercise and sleep and avoiding stressors are important for your brain, but proper diet has such an important impact, such a huge impact on cognitive health and overall health in general. All right, let me see here. Okay, can you all see me now?
We can't see you. I was just telling Emilie we can't see her face, so I'm not sure why, but that's okay. If you wanted to just keep going, you can. We had you up on the little square and it's not showing.
Let me see.
Now Mary says she can see your face, so just go ahead, Emilie.
Okay. Okay, sounds
Thank you.
good. All right, so like we were talking about, the food and the drinks that we put into our bodies, they affect our brain just as much as they affect our body. It makes sense sometimes, you know, I think we have a habit of compartmentalizing our body, thinking, well, I have to do this for my heart, or I have to do this for my skin, or I'm doing this for my digestive health. Well, it's important to remember that our bodies are connected. They're not separate compartments. So something that you're doing for your heart, of course, is going to have impacts throughout the rest of your body. And so, you know, just like we say, you are what you eat. The food and drinks that you're eating affect your cognitive health in a huge way. We're living longer lives in this country. Our life expectancy has gone up, and because of this, we have a much higher risk of chronic diseases, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and so proper nutrition, eating healthfully is you know, more important than ever to really either reduce our risk of developing these chronic illnesses, or at least to help mitigate some of the negative side effects of these chronic disease. So because chronic disease can impact the quality of your life, you know, we really want to try to eat well. And I think it's important to remember that it's never too late to start making lifestyle changes that can benefit your mind and your body. So even for those who you may already have been diagnosed with a chronic illness, making just a few lifestyle changes can really minimize negative impacts, and that you're not only living longer lives, but more functional lives. I think that's key, quality as well as quantity. Okay, so let's really start to get into the meat of today's topic. So what is good for your heart is good for your mind. We'll be talking about the mind diet, and we're going to go into a lot of details about this. But first, I'd like to kind of dive into some details about the foundation of what the mind diet is, where it came from, and why it was developed. So the Mediterranean diet is one of the most well-researched diets that's out there right now. It consistently is ranked as one of the healthiest diets, and it really stands up to the test of time. It follows these kind of traditional Mediterranean cuisines, so the diets of Greece and southern France and parts of Italy, and they've been found to be some of the most healthful diets in the world. People living in these regions tend to live longer than other populations, and compared to Americans, they are less likely to die of coronary artery disease and develop cancer. The latest research even suggests that the Mediterranean diet may help with rheumatoid arthritis and reduce the risk of dementia. And we'll kind of talk about how those two may be linked a little bit later. So the Mediterranean diet, I would be willing to bet that you're all familiar with that one. The DASH diet has been around for a long time too. This one's doesn't quite get the splashy headlines that the Mediterranean diet has gotten, but the DASH diet, it stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. And this was actually developed by the American Heart Association, and they really wanted to come up with an eating plan to address hypertension or high blood pressure, heart disease. But they also found that following the DASH diet can help reduce your risk of heart attack, stroke, even type 2 diabetes. So like we were talking about earlier, your body is not separate compartments. Everything is all connected. So both of these diets combined, studies have found that people who follow these types of diets have reduced risk of cognitive impairment, cardiovascular risks, and diabetes. So this new eating plan is called the MIND diet. Current research is not really able to show the exact mechanism by which the diet reduces cognitive decline, but that's why it was developed. It was developed to address cognitive health. One theory is that the MIND diet reduces your overall oxidative stress and inflammation. So oxidative stress is an accumulation of free radicals, and these cause damage to cells. Brain cells are especially vulnerable to this oxidative damage. And I think it's really important. We hear a lot about antioxidants in the news and on TV, but I think it's really important to really dive into and think about what an oxidant even is. What is an oxidant? Why is it so bad? Doesn't sound that bad. It sounds like oxygen, and we know we need oxygen to live. So why would an oxidant be so bad? Well, oxidants are the byproduct of a lot of different processes in our bodies and in the environment. So for example, just creating energy from food through the natural process of metabolism, our bodies create oxidants. They're a natural byproduct. But oxidants are also created by some less healthy natural processes. So things like sun exposure from UV light, and also cigarette smoke or pollution. These can expose our body to high levels of oxidants as well. And what happens is these oxidants get into our bodies and they kind of cause this chain reaction of cell damage. So they will oxidize some cell in your body, and then that cell is damaged, and it kind of creates this kind of cascading negative system within our bodies that can really damage a lot of cells and tissues, and ultimately cause some really negative health outcomes. And so why antioxidants are touted as being such a helpful thing, and why we are always stressed to eat antioxidants and put them on our skin and really try to include them in our lives, is they break that chain. So the antioxidants can step in and they neutralize that oxidant. So they can stop that chain reaction and stop any further damage. So following a Mediterranean diet and a DASH diet, these diets have been associated with lower levels of oxidative stress and inflammation. That kind of makes sense too, why the Mediterranean diet has been studied recently for helping to improve symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis, because that is so tied with inflammation, and same with cognitive decline. Another theory as to why the MIND diet is so beneficial for cognitive health is that certain aspects of the MIND diet have been shown to reduce the formation of what are called beta amyloid proteins. So these beta amyloid proteins can accumulate in your brain and form plaques, which eventually lead to brain cell death. Many scientists believe that these proteins are the primary cause of Alzheimer's disease. So preliminary studies looking into the MIND diet suggest that the foods that are really stressed in this diet, the ones that you're supposed to include, which we'll show on the next slide, they may help prevent the formation of beta amyloid plaques in the brain. And then there are a few foods that people are encouraged to avoid on the MIND diet, and these foods are linked with increased level of these beta amyloid proteins. So that kind of, that may be kind of the common theme with the MIND diet and why it's so beneficial for cognitive health. So here we have it. MIND diet is a clever little acronym here. It stands for Mediterranean-Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. So I'm sure that they picked that term so that it was cute and we can remember it, but I love it. It really works well, and it's taking these two really well-researched diets, the Mediterranean diet and DASH diet, and really fusing them to focus on cognitive decline. So the MIND diet is not a weight loss diet. That's not why it was developed. It was developed through funding to really look at cognitive health and to address this in the community and in kind of the long-term care, continuing care setting within different communities. So it's consistently ranked as one of the healthiest diets by US News and World Report. Again, it's not really focused on weight loss, although if that's a goal of yours, there are certainly aspects of the MIND diet that can help direct you towards kind of lower calorie and healthier choices when it comes to helping to manage weight. But it's really focused on health. So this diet was developed at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. Researchers there followed thousands of seniors in the Chicago area. They looked at seniors in kind of long-term care settings, assisted living, and also living in the community. And they followed them for about 4.5 years. So not a terribly long time, but certainly a long enough time to get a good baseline of what people are really eating and what they're doing. The first paper that was published on the MIND diet was published in 2015. So it's a relatively new diet. It certainly doesn't have, kind of the breadth of research that surrounds the Mediterranean or the DASH diet. But this preliminary research is really looking positive, and it's enough so that it's worth sharing. It's already made the list of best diets, and there's more and more research coming out all the time. There are these larger scale studies that are currently being conducted, so I'm sure we'll see more the outcomes of those studies even in future years here. So what they did, these researchers at Rush University, they followed these seniors and they asked them a basic question about kind of the foods that they include and the foods that they don't include in their diet. And so what they've come up with from this study are these 10 foods to include in your diet and then 5 foods to avoid. So it's a really simple eating plan. We're focusing on 10 foods and we're trying to stay away from 5 others. It's not an all-inclusive diet, so you can't just live off of these 10 foods. And certainly there are other things that aren't listed on the foods to avoid that we should try to stay away from for other reasons. We're not really addressing things like exercise or smoking in this diet. We're really just focusing on these specifics up on the screen right now. What the researchers found was that people who tend to follow these guidelines the most rigorously, so they follow these guidelines very closely, they reduce their risk of developing Alzheimer's by up to 53%. So those were for participants who really followed this diet closely. But even for those who, maybe didn't follow everything to a T, they had red meat a little bit more than once a week, or, they stopped by McDonald's maybe one time too many that month, these people still reduce their risk of developing Alzheimer's by about 35%. So that's for people who just are following these guidelines more moderately, a little bit more loosely. One of the main limitations of this study of the MIND diet, which developed the MIND diet, is that it's observational. An observational study doesn't necessarily prove cause and effect. So just kind of defined in the name there, we're observing people. We're observing what habits they already have. So for 4.5 years, we're looking at what seniors were already eating and then tracking to see, whether or not they went on to develop health issues, including Alzheimer's. So these larger studies that are currently in place that are looking at the MIND diet, they're looking more into what happens when we're putting more like active interventions in place. So maybe someone wasn't eating this way and now they're going to start eating this way. So those do a better job of really showing, what the effects of making a change would be. But in the meantime, it still really shows promise, and even if we're not following it to a T, we're showing a significant benefit when it comes to your brain health. So like the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diets, let's get really into these 10 foods to include here. The MIND diet focuses on plant-based foods. It's rich in fruits and vegetables. It's rich in whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats. So let's discuss these food groups in a little bit more detail on the following slides. Okay, fruits and vegetables. I don't think you could ever listen to a dietitian talk about a healthy diet without talking about these. It's a pretty common theme across all healthy eating patterns throughout history. Unless you really have a specific health condition that requires you to limit these things, they're a foundation of healthy eating. And the two main focuses for the MIND diet are the two pictures here. So berries and leafy greens. These fruits and vegetables in particular show benefit for cognitive health and brain health. So to make sure you get enough leafy greens, which I will admit, I'm not even really able to do most days, having a salad every day is a good place to start. I'll give a little caveat here that if you are on any sort of anticoagulant medication like warfarin or Coumadin, that you would talk to your doctor before making any drastic changes to your intake of leafy greens, because they are a significant source of vitamin K. So that can interact with those medications. But otherwise, we're really looking to try to get these nearly every day, at least 6 days a week. You might have 1 day off from leafy greens. Anything from turnip to mustard greens, kale, spinach, all of these beautiful vegetables are included. And the serving size is about 1/2 cup cooked, so they do lose a lot of volume when you're cooking them, or a cup raw. So a good place to start would be to have a cup of leafy green salad for lunch, and that would help get you your leafy green serving every day. The Mind Diet also includes another vegetable every day. So there's a lot more freedom with this recommendation. You can make a lot of different choices, get a variety of those other vegetables, literally any other kind of vegetable. But I like the saying to eat the rainbow. So one thing that I will talk about a lot here at Claremont Park when I'm giving a presentation is that the color of the vegetable or the fruit, it tells you something. It's not just for show. Carrots are orange because they contain beta carotene, and beta carotene is a really potent antioxidant. Tomatoes are red because they have lycopene, and lycopene is showing all these benefits for heart health. So the color matters, and it's important to try to get a variety of colors. If you're always eating orange vegetables, then you're going to be missing out on all those benefits from the red vegetables. Even the white vegetables have specific antioxidants and specific nutrients to that color. So choosing colorful fruits and vegetables to get that extra serving of vegetables every day, that's part of the Mind Diet. Okay, and then of course, eating fruit is another foundation of the Mind Diet with that focus on fruits and vegetables, but particularly berries. And the recommendation there is to have berries at least 2 days a week. The serving size for berries is kind of large. It's about a cup raw. And if you think about what the 5 or 6 ounce plastic clamshells of berries, that's kind of the small size that you can get in the grocery store, that's about a cup. So it would entail buying a couple of those every week and including those throughout the week, maybe as a snack or as a dessert. Another thing that I love to do with berries is to buy them frozen. So I know y'all are out in California and you have wonderful produce, and I'm so jealous, but here in Colorado and back in the Midwest, we didn't always have access to really fresh and delicious berries year round. So frozen berries are an excellent alternative. They are picked and frozen at the peak of ripeness. They have their nutrient content, their antioxidant content really preserved about as best as possible. Sometimes frozen berries are even higher in nutrients than fresh berries, depending on where they've come from. If they've been sitting on a truck or on a boat for days and days waiting to get to your grocery store, your supermarket, then they're losing a lot of nutrients along the way. So nothing wrong with choosing those frozen berries to help with meal planning or with grocery shopping. Their texture does change a little bit. You would notice that. So when they thaw, they lose some of their structure, so they are a little bit softer and mushy. But they still work really well in smoothies. They work great in like yogurt parfaits. They're really a delicious way to get this recommendation. Okay, on to proteins and fats. Protein is a really important nutrient. It's really, of course, important for building and maintaining muscle. I think that's usually the first thing we think about. But it's also really important for things like our immune system, our skin, even our bone health is really, we need adequate protein intake to maintain healthy bones. And as we age, we need more protein. Our body is not as efficient at extracting and processing the protein from our food as we get older. So as a result, we need to eat a little bit more protein to compensate for this from our food. So with the Mind Diet guidelines on proteins, what the recommendations are to choose fish at least 1 time a week, and 2 if possible. Fish like salmon, sardines, trout, tuna, and mackerel are the best options because of omega-3 fatty acids. This is definitely something that's a really foundational pillar for the Mediterranean diet. These omega-3 fatty acids are in the largest concentration in the fish I just listed. Sardines are not always the most appealing, but I love to treat canned sardines just like canned tuna, and mix in some mayo and mustard and treat that like a tuna salad and eat it on crackers. And they're just such a rich source of omega-3s. Omega-3 fatty acids play a really crucial role in our brain function, and they've just been shown again and again to reduce the risk of heart disease. So they're really important when it comes to decreasing inflammation. So no surprise that they are included on this, since inflammation plays a really big role in cognitive decline as well. At least 2 days a week, select poultry as your protein. So choosing poultry over red meat many days per week. Poultry is generally a healthier animal protein choice because of its lower saturated fat content. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The key is to avoid fried varieties. So going to Chick-fil-A doesn't count as your poultry intake for the week. But a serving for both fish and poultry is about 3 ounces, about the size of a deck of cards. So most chicken breasts, chicken thighs that you're buying in the grocery store these days, they're pushing 5 or 6 ounces just for one piece. So it's not a huge portion that you need to be eating. A lot of times you can split a chicken breast and get those 3 ounces. And part of the reason why portion size is important with protein and why I focus on it, and probably my history is, following a vegetarian diet for years definitely influences, is that there's really no benefit to going over about 30 grams of protein at any meal. And a 3 to 4 ounce portion of fish or poultry, that gets you pretty close to 30 grams. Now, eating more than that, eating, a huge serving of chicken getting up to 50 or 60 grams, or people who eat, protein shakes with a ton of protein. It's not necessarily harmful. It's just, there's no increased benefit to going over 30 grams. There's no benefit to muscle synthesis. There's no extra benefit for your immune system. So there's really just no need to go over that amount. All right, so nuts are another hallmark of the Mind Diet. And the recommendation is at least 5 servings per week, so nearly every day. When you're choosing nuts to have, it's important to choose non-salted or lightly salted varieties. Some of those flavored choices, like the smokehouse or sweet and sour or sweet and spicy barbecue, those kinds can be really high in sodium, so that's something to keep in mind. Another thing to remember when it comes to including these servings of nuts per week is the serving size. So when you're saying 5 or more servings of nuts a week, that sounds like kind of a lot, that you'll be going through a jar of peanut butter a week. But it is not the case. The serving size for nuts is pretty small. It's only about 1 ounce or 1/4 cup. So about what can fit in the palm of your hand. And this can vary slightly when it comes to pistachios, for example. If you're buying the kind with shells, the portion size is about 1/2 cup because those shells take up some volume. But the key with including nuts in your diet is to try to get a variety. So peanuts, almonds, pistachios, walnuts, they are all beneficial. So the Mind Diet study didn't specify which nuts specifically to include. When they were asking seniors about their eating patterns, they just asked generically, do you include nuts in your diet and how many days per week? So variety is key. All right, when it comes to fat in the diet. So we're on to we've talked about protein, and actually nuts are a good segue because they are very high in fat, just naturally. When it comes to fat, we're really focusing on low saturated fat oils such as olive oil. So that's a real big crossover from the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet recommends like 2 tablespoons of olive oil every day. So that carries over to this MIND diet. Olive oil, definitely, there are, time and time again, these studies are coming out that it's having some of the best benefits for our heart and for our cognitive health. Cooking with olive oil is kind of a controversial subject. I had always been told, don't cook with olive oil. It has a low smoke point, which is true. It does have a relatively low smoke point when it, compared to, say, canola oil. But actually, the science behind this recommendation doesn't necessarily stand up. So olive oil is relatively high in monounsaturated fats. And these are more resistant to oxidation when they're applied to heat. So the science really suggests that olive oil is safe to cook with in most applications, including like pan frying or roasting. And some of those higher heat cooking applications like deep frying, we really would be recommending to stay away from that anyway. So when it comes to, trying to follow these diet guidelines and including olive oil, really the science suggests that olive oil is a safe oil to be cooking with. The oils that we're trying to stay away from, though, are those saturated fats, such as butter or lard, and then really high fat items. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. Okay, breads and whole grains. Whole grains, the recommendation is to include at least 3 servings per day. Oatmeal, whole grain pasta, brown rice, popcorn, whole grain bread, these are all great sources. A serving size is just about a half a cup of cooked grains or 3 cups of popcorn or 1 slice of bread. So when you think about 3 servings per day, that could be your slice of whole grain bread for breakfast. It could be, popcorn as a snack in the afternoon. It could be a half a cup of brown rice with your dinner. So not hard to get to that 3 servings per day at all. And the reason why we're focusing on whole grains versus more refined or enriched, that word enriched kind of means that they've taken something away from that grain and so they need to add it back in. But the reason we're focusing on whole grains with this diet is because of their fiber content. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So 2 main types of fiber. There are our insoluble fibers. Those promote bowel regularity. So these kind of provide some stool bulking and help people stay regular, helps keep our digestive system healthy. People who eat a lot of whole grains in their diet have been shown to have reduced risk of colon cancer, kind of because it keeps things moving along. Soluble fiber is the other kind. This type of fiber really has gotten a lot more publicity and press in the last 10 years or so because of its benefit for reducing cholesterol and then also helping to control blood sugars. So the soluble fiber is really interesting. I love it. I love talking about it. It's particularly high in things like oatmeal. So that's why you'll see that claim on a box of Cheerios or a box of Quaker Oats that tells you that Cheerios can help reduce your cholesterol. And the way it works is kind of interesting. It is soluble, so it forms a gel in your gut, so it kind of soaks up all this water. And that can really help you also feel full after a meal. So it's kind of been touted as having benefits for weight management. So if you're having that soluble fiber, it helps keep you feeling fuller for longer. But as it moves through your digestive tract, it kind of pulls some things in your digestive tract like bile salts out of your body. So it helps remove some of this cholesterol from your body on its way out. And that's kind of how it works with its cholesterol lowering properties. Speaking of fiber, beans are another thing to include at least 3 or 4 times a week, so about every other day as part of the MIND diet. So all beans are really included in this. Lentils, soybeans are a legume as well. The serving size is just about a half a cup cooked, so not a whole lot throughout the day. And a good way to try to get this in throughout the week is to choose maybe a meatless meal 1 day a week, or vegetarian chili, or maybe having, throwing in an extra can of beans when you're making, a soup, especially as it gets a little bit little bit less hot this winter. That's always nice to have. Beans and legumes are one of my favorite topics. They're one of the best foods that you can eat to support a healthy gut microbiome. I know that's not the topic of today's presentation, but the bacteria that naturally live in our gut, they really love the substances that are in beans and legumes. And the key with eating beans comfortably, if this is not something you're not already including in your diet, is to go slow. So the bacteria that are in our gut, they adjust to the things that we eat. So as we start to eat more beans, more bacteria that really like to eat beans will show up in our digestive tract. So if you're having, discomfort with eating beans or even whole grains, go slow, introduce it slowly, start with just one serving a week for several weeks and give your body time to adjust. Okay, so on to hydration. So we've been focusing on food, but what you drink is important too. And with the MIND diet, like the Mediterranean diet, we get to drink wine. Up to 1 glass of wine per day. And no, this is not one of those giant glasses that hold the whole bottle. It's only about 5 ounces, so a little bit more than half a cup. And both red and white wines have shown benefits for our cognitive health, but the MIND diet research is really focused on red wine, and that's because of this, this component in red wine called resveratrol. So that's the antioxidant that really has been the focus of a lot of different studies on cognitive health. If you don't drink alcohol, grape juice has resveratrol as well. It can be a little bit higher in sugar, so you want to watch your portion size, stick to maybe 4 ounces of grape juice. And more importantly, we want to be drinking plenty of water. So we need to stay hydrated. Drinking plenty of water is really important for regulating our body temperature. It's important for digestive health. It's important for urinary tract health. There's nothing in our body that doesn't depend on adequate hydration. And if you're not a fan of plain water, I hear that a lot. You just don't care for it. It wasn't part of your habits growing up. You just were never a water drinker, and it just sounds impossible to try to drink 6 cups of that stuff every day. Make it a little bit more interesting. We do fruit infused water here a lot at our community. If you're just adding, a slice of lemon, a slice of lime, and letting that water sit overnight, it's amazing how much it can infuse that flavor and really make it a lot more interesting to drink and help you stay hydrated a lot better. I always joke too that I think cucumber infused water is more flavorful than cucumbers themselves. So something about when you put a slice of cucumber in water, it just makes it delicious. And it's a nice refreshing thing, especially in the summer. So keep a jug of infused water in your fridge or stick with just plain water. Okay, I wanted to touch a little bit on those 5 foods that were recommended to avoid or limit within the MIND diet. The first one is red meat. So that's limited to just once a week. Butter and margarine, limited to a tablespoon a day. Margarine has certainly had a huge fall from grace in the last 10 years or so, and that's because of its trans fat content. So food manufacturers have reformulated margarine to remove this trans fat, but it still relies on other types of fat like palm oil primarily that are really high in saturated fat. Cheese, unfortunately, just once a week is the recommendation. Pastries and sweets, less than 4 times a week, and then fried or fast food, less than once a week. And the reason that the researchers have included this within the MIND diet is because these foods are all high in either trans or saturated fats. And the studies have really found that trans fats are very clearly associated with both heart disease and Alzheimer's disease. But saturated fat is a little bit more complicated. So saturated fat and its effects on heart health, it's widely debated right now in the nutrition world. So the research is somewhat inconclusive, the research is contested, but overall there are these studies in animals and in humans that suggest that saturated fat in excess is associated with poor brain health. So both saturated fat and trans fat increase beta amyloid proteins, which we talked about earlier, in mice's brains. Now this is just in mice, it's not necessarily in humans, but It does have that link. And then human observational studies, again, where you're looking at a population, found a doubled risk of Alzheimer's disease with those with high saturated fat consumption. So that's, even with the controversy surrounding saturated fat, that's what the researchers are recommending. And it's not saying you can never eat it. I mean, you can see here, you're limited on it. It's about moderation, and moderation might look like a whole lot less than what we're used to on this, for eating kind of the standard American diet. Okay, moving on a little bit to herbs and spices. A lot of herbs and spices are being studied for their health benefits. So for example, turmeric and its benefits for inflammation, garlic and cancer, cayenne pepper and metabolism. They're really a great way to add flavor to these mind diet foods without adding extra salt, sugar, or fat. So herbs are the green leafy parts of plants, and then spices are really anything else besides the leaves. So the bark, the root, the berries, typically dried and either used whole or ground up. So we're gonna watch a short video from Chef Bal Arneson. I'll launch this on YouTube right now.
Hi there, I'm Chef Bal. Over 40 years, Morrison Living has been providing inspired dining, wellness, environmental, and hospitality offerings that serve the diverse need of our residents every day. And I am so thrilled that I am part of Morrison Living's family, and this family believes in that be the best part of someone's day. And for me, my best part of the day is when I am in my kitchen cooking amazing food. And I would like to share my best day with you. And so I thought, why don't I talk about recipes that really focus on immune system? And for me, one of the ingredients that really helps the immune system is ginger. So today's recipes are all going to be focused on ginger. So today's recipe is ginger lemon tea, and I start my day with this tea. This tea has everything I absolutely love. So let's look at the ingredients. So I have ginger, I have lemon, and I have some different kinds of teas here. I've got like apple cinnamon tea, I've got some green matcha tea, and this like peach apple tea. I love all this tea. You don't have to have it, but I love all these teas. And we're gonna have some water and some lemonade and honey to sweeten it. So this is so easy to make. So first thing is just going to add some water. And I love ginger, so I'm going to put like big chunks of ginger in my tea. So the best thing about ginger is great for nausea. So this is really, really used even some of the nausea medication. So I'm just going to add some ginger, and let's add some lemon to it to give a really nice citrusness that I'm looking for right now. And lemon's going to add that, and some lemonade. So for as tea bag, I'm going to be using tea bags because not often you can find the loose tea. So I have my matcha tea, I have some apple cinnamon tea, I have some peach and apple tea. So that's all going to be going right into this container. I'm gonna add some honey to give a really nice sweetener to the tea. You can use agave or even brown sugar to it. And look at this beautiful color is changing. And that actually is my my cinnamon and apple tea bag that's giving a really beautiful color. And we'll bring this to a boil for 5 to 10 minutes. And then all the flavors from the ginger will go right in. So I'm just gonna put a lid on and then just let it boil. Look how beautiful this cup is. A girlfriend of mine gave me this cup as a birthday present to me, and I absolutely love it. Every time I drink my tea in this cup, it makes me think of her. So today's tea is going to be served in this beautiful cup. So the tea has been boiling for the next 8 or 10 minutes. And right now, the aroma is like the ginger and lemon and cinnamon and apple and peach is like filling my kitchen with amazing, amazing aromas and flavors. So I can't wait to try my tea. So let's ladle the tea now. I just love the color. It is such a beautiful, nice color. And that comes from tea bags. So you can use any tea bags you like. This tea is exactly, I've been craving all day today. Oh, the honey is just a perfect amount of sweetness. Ginger has a little bit bite, and that's exactly what I was looking for. I wanted my flavors to be focused on ginger. So this is perfect amount of ginger bite and some lemon, and this is so calming and so healing, and I feel already really good.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. Okay. So back to lemon and ginger here. So one of the things I love ginger, and like Chef Bal said, it's really beneficial for nausea. There have actually been studies comparing the use of just plain powdered ginger in a capsule with Dramamine, the motion sickness medication, and they found that taking ginger before inducing motion sickness was more. People had reductions in nausea even more so than that medication. So that's something that I will use when I'm flying because I get terrible motion sickness, so that you're not having to take a medication like that, which can have unintended side effects. And then lemon, I love. It is a great source of vitamin C. That's what gives lemon its acidity, that ascorbic acid, which is really important for healthy immune system, also healthy skin, as well as, of course, preventing scurvy. So really important for our skin tissues. So how do we get started with the MIND diet? What are some easy things that you can do to start incorporating these great 10 foods and stay away from those not so great 5? You can replace a dish with red meat with fish at 1 meal per week, and replace red meat with poultry 2 days a week. I love trying to think about filling half your plate with fruits and vegetables. That's such a great visual. So whenever you're setting up your meal, you're cooking, you're choosing food from, the buffet or anything like that, you want to make half of it fruits and vegetables. Drinking wine in moderation, which is just 1 glass. Choosing whole grains, trying to get those 3 every day. That can be a really easy swap. So if you're already having pasta, for example, you're just swapping in whole wheat pasta instead. Choosing olive oil in place of things like butter or margarine, and then also having nuts. They make a great snack nearly every day. So choosing those as a snack maybe instead of something like potato chips or cookies. All right, so that concludes my presentation today. I will be pulling up the chat screen now to take a look at your questions. Let's see, we've got some good ones here. Okay. Okay. So, what is a good portion size for beans? Great question. So specifically for black beans. When it comes to beans and legumes, your portion size is a half a cup. So I think we usually say about the size of like a tennis ball is all you really need for beans. So it doesn't hurt to even just grab a measuring cup the first couple times you're incorporating beans if you're not used to what that looks like. It's also about a third of a standard can of beans. So when you're buying canned beans from the store, it's about a third of that container. And I'm a big proponent of buying canned beans. There are some really great options that I've noticed over the years. A lot of like no added salt or low sodium options. It seems like those are available more and more these days. And it just is so much easier than trying to prepare it from scratch. I used to always try to make beans from scratch, and as much as I appreciate having that experience, there's nothing easier than just opening up a can and dumping it into soup or into salad, or even just heating it up and eating it as is. Okay, question from Patty. How do you know when buying olive oil if lower cost brands are as good as higher priced? Great question. Price doesn't necessarily dictate quality. So there's a lot of things that go into olive oil, like marketing or the the color of the label, or how exclusive they're marketing it as. So cost does not indicate quality. I think the best thing to do when it comes to olive oil is to try a variety and to figure out what kind you like the best. So you can do your own taste test at home. With just a little bit of bread or something like that, where you're dipping it in and you're tasting it yourself. One thing with olive oil that I typically follow is to try not to buy too much at once, because it does go rancid fairly quickly. So sometimes the smaller bottles may not be as good of a value per ounce, but if you're not going to go through a really large bottle of olive oil, it doesn't make sense to spend that much extra on a really big bottle and then have that go to waste in your pantry. Oh, great question from Elizabeth, also about beans. Does the value of beans differ canned or fresh? So when it comes to canned beans, those are essentially just cooked beans. They've done the work for you. They've done the sorting, they've done the soaking and the cooking, and then put that in a can for you. Of course, they can add a lot of salt. That's what can make them taste better. So they want to add salt to it. Whereas when you're cooking them yourself from scratch or fresh, you have more control over that. Really, when it comes down to it, though, nutritionally, they're essentially the same. Sometimes even canned varieties of beans are a little bit lower, depending on how you prepare them yourself. They're a little bit lower in the carbohydrates that can cause GI distress. So when you open up a can of beans, you can rinse it to get any extra sodium off, and you can also rinse away some of the carbohydrates that are a little bit difficult for our bodies to digest. So they can be just be a little bit easier to digest even than if you're preparing them fresh. Okay, a question from Joanne and Joe. What nuts are best? They all are. They all have different vitamins, different minerals, especially. Nuts are a really great source of things like magnesium, especially things like pistachios. The calorie and fat and protein and fiber content vary a little bit between them. So things like peanuts are especially high in protein, but then things like almonds are really high in fiber. walnuts are especially high in omega-3 fatty acids when compared to other nuts, although not still not near the content of fatty fish like salmon. So, you know, it's pick or choose. Pick the ones that are on sale that week. Pick what you like. That's, I think, really important. If you're going to be trying to eat these 5 days a week, you should like it. Getting a nice, you know, a nice nut mix, a mixed nut, you know, container of roasted mixed nuts, that's a great way to go. That way you're getting a little bit of everything. Okay, can I please address concerns with genetically modified grains? Great question. So I think, you know, there are a lot of concerns when it comes to genetic modification in the food system, really valid points. You know, the research is limited. This is a really new technology that people are trying. There aren't a whole lot of genetically modified grains that are in our food system at this time. So, you know, as far as I know, in terms of, and I'm no expert on this, but as far as I know, the main foods in our food system that are genetically modified at this point are things like soybeans and corn, and maybe canola as well. So that canola oil. But a lot of the grains that we grow, like for oatmeal or things like quinoa, barley, there just aren't genetically modified versions even at this point. So it's not really available in our food system. But I think, you know, research into this is definitely warranted. There needs to be really rigorous research because we're making pretty significant changes to the foods that we're growing. But it's too early to really give any sort of conclusive, you know, final say in terms of genetic modification. Okay, question about cottage cheese. Cottage cheese can be pretty high in salt. That can actually be rinsed off. Cottage cheese isn't necessarily addressed in this diet. It doesn't typically fall within the cheese category. You know, you can pick the low-fat versions to really limit your intake of saturated fats. Really great source of protein. This kind of just falls outside of the 15 foods that we're talking about with the MIND diet, which, like I said in the beginning, you can't live off of these, so there needs to be some other things to fill in there. And then question, why are the 5 bad? I think the real common theme among the 5 foods that we're trying to limit is their high content of trans fats and saturated fats. How do I feel about supplements? I think there's a time and a place for supplements. As a dietitian, I always try to, and stress with anyone I'm working with, try to get those nutrients from food first. Food first, always. But there's definitely a time and a place for supplements. For example, living in Colorado, even living in Illinois, I knew I wasn't able to get enough vitamin D from the sun. I also was concerned about, you know, skin health, and I wouldn't recommend someone be outside for hours at a time to try to get vitamin D. And vitamin D containing foods are really, can be really expensive, and they can just be tricky to get enough of on a week-to-week basis. So, you know, in that case, it might be recommended that you do a vitamin D supplement, but food first as much as possible.
So Emily, we're right at about 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So, I just wanted to let everybody know that if we didn't get your questions answered, we will ask Emily to answer them, and we'll send them along with the video tape. Just want to be mindful of time. Thank you very much for your time. Your presentation was great. And we'll go ahead and save these questions and get them out to everybody, as well as the videotape. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Emily. It was fantastic. And have a healthy day. Bye, everyone.